which, again, Score is a wonderful kindred players. So we're excited to see maybe the Graves or some of these more edge jungle picks make it through with the Elise band. We're not going to see the Rek'Sai versus Elise wars we saw in the previous series.
There we go, Lissandra. No Lissandra for Cuve. He's had some fantastic engages, GP taken away. So are we going to see of course, the Alistar here, definitely an option. The Rek'Sai, very attractive. Corki, Kalista.
What about Poppy? That's another interesting question. We did see Poppy banned last series, and Cuve's Poppy was another champion that he's shone on, but I think you're on the board with the first pick, Alistar. Despite the fact there's these other picks that are being flashed that are attractive, the Alistar seems like the most all-around first pick, but we'll see what KT decide on.
And the Rek'Sai is also going to be attractive with the Elise band, so it's just where they're going to prioritize at the moment, and they're going to force ambition onto perhaps a pick that is not so ideal in this meta, but Alistar looks like it'll be the go-to. And KT really not the team that's going to first pick an AD carry either. They've been overwhelmingly playing Lucian this season.
They're holding on to the Poppy, they lock it in.
All right.
Now,
So
a team that plays around their top lane, locking in a flex pick top laner, but again, a champion we've only seen in top lane so far, is a bit surprising. So they go for the Poppy. Is it a takeaway from Cuve, or is it something they've been practicing all week? Remember, it's been 8 days since we've seen them on this big OGN stage.
Corki will head into Samsung's hands as a result. Well, they'll have that flex pick available until the end of the draft on red side. Kalista, Alistar snapped up by KT Rolster. Easy pick for them.
Yeah, really strong duo lane. And, you know, we talked about denial picks. Taking away Alistar from Wraith. Wraith has been really impressive on Alistar after a 2015 where he was in and out of the squad, you know, was sharing time with Luna and other supports. His Alistar's play specifically this season has been outstanding. So I think he's played at least 75% of his games on the Alistar, so smart takeaway from KT.
Contemplating a blind pick Gnar here, or perhaps, well, we'll be into Poppy actually. So they know the matchup, and that's what they're going to select. Cuve played a lot of Gnar last year, but we haven't seen too much of it in the league as a whole this year. And there's the Thresh pick for Wraith.
Oh, baby.
And we're probably going to see that, Papa Smithy. They've got the big front line already developed, so why not take some burst? The question is,
what is Fly going to play?
Exactly. Could be Corki in the mid lane. He could blind pick a TF. Now, back when he was on the Jin Air Stealths, TF was probably his best champion, so it'd be nice to see this one again. Ahri, a bit of a safer blind pick, though.
Has been messing around with the Ziggs that he's called out a few times, but I don't think we're going to see the Ziggs here just yet. It would be a pure wave clear champion. Both Twisted Fate and Ahri have good wave clear, but Ahri will be a slight change of pace from his previous champions that have definitely been ones that skirt the outside of team fights and play on the back foot most of the time. But Score on Graves, it just fits so well. It's something that any old school League of Legends fan, specifically a Korean League of Legends fan, would be accustomed to, and it's locked in. So we are going to see the Graves and the Ahri. So this is a change of pace from KT. Okay, I would say Poppy slightly outscales Nara in the split push in the late game, but similar roles in team fights. Certainly not the same outscale Fiora comp that KT have been by and by getting by with.
And we could see the Tristana counterpick here in conjunction with the Corki would give them a lot of pressure on the turrets, and they're going to try to match the lanes and take a 2v2 with Tristana and Thresh up against Kalista and get the better end of some of these trades.
I'm worried for Samsung though. When we do see the likes of the Corki mid, these siege comps, which I think are very strong in the meta, there's usually more disengaged than literally just the Thresh. Nara is more of a ranged auto attacker onto turrets than really a champion that can dissuade all in. Specifically, you can play around the Naba. This is a high-risk siege comp from Samsung, and one that KT have good ways to deal with. Poppy getting into the backline is going to wreck some stuff, let me tell you.
Yeah, and they have so much mobility too. Great engage, huge amounts of bursts. Ahri will have no problem getting the flank, neither will Poppy. And we know how good some days teleport flanks can be. He's always been one of the better players in Korea, one of the better top laners at engaging for his team, stretching all the way back to the KT Arrows days.
But the worry is, even if you're Corki, you go for that auto attack, Charm hits you, you're going to be instant dead to a flash Alistar. Alistar himself, great at engage, so KT have a lot of answers to the comp that Samsung's put in, so I don't know about really pigeonholing yourself on Siege with that last pick, Tristana?
Well, they have a chance at least, Papa Smithy, to win the lanes. That's
Sure.
the upside here, is that if we get standard lanes, Samsung has a chance to just take an advantage straight out of the laning phase. They got the Tristana counter pick. They have the range advantage against Poppy with the Gnar. So can they do it? Can they get that snowball started early? That will be the question for Samsung here. KT versus Samsung, game 1 starts now.
Mother Nature, everybody wants to rule the world.
So second match of the night after Jin Air gets the 2-0 victory over CJ Entis, and now two teams with only one loss each so far going head to head. Samsung versus KT Rolster.
Look, a new look KT draft. That's exciting to see on its own. No longer pigeonholing themselves into last rotation counterpick top lane. They've gone for Someday first picking his top laner. KT finally have some lane pressure with the Ahri in mid, who will probably be matching wave clear for wave clear, but does have obviously kill potential depending on the ganks. And look, Jungle Graves, that's already lots of excitement for KT.
Yeah, I like the way that they're attempting to play in this game. They have a lot of opportunity to do some serious burst damage on dives with the Ahri and the Graves. So we could see some nice roams from Fly in conjunction with Score. It's something to take a look for.
This is surprising to see. So KT are actually initiating a lane swap despite the fact that you'd have to expect Gnar to have quite the superior 1v2 compared to Poppy. Obviously Poppy probably not going to die, but can only really do AoE wave clear from very short range. But yeah, dodging out of the Tristana lane matchup that's always been one of the better ones against Kalista in the laning phase at least.
I think that makes sense. So Arrow has actually been doing a lot to carry this KT team right now. He is number 2 overall in kills in the league with 35 so far.
Who's first?
Kuro.
Interesting. Of all people.
Well, you also have to remember, Papa Smithy, that KT has only played 3 best of 3s, and Arrow is still in the lead, or still in second place. So he has been doing a lot of work on that Lucian, and going to be on Kalista this game.
By far the least amount of games played has been KT, as you mentioned, so that is actually, that average per game will be very, very high. So getting Arrow ahead seems like a smart early move. Wraith going for a walk, finds the jungle follow, but a little bit late. Feels like Samsung were late on the uptick with going for that information race.
Yeah, definitely if you start to take the Krugs right there, your support can be there while they're doing the red buff. Not going to be roaming quite so quickly this time, and just gets information about which camps they've taken and will help them out when it comes to making a decision about how to play out the rest of this lane swap. Meanwhile, KT here and Samsung, they both started on the weak side, so they get full clears of their own jungle, no camps taken. And Graves is actually going to be given the blue buff here, it looks like.
Graves with blue buff can do excellent dueling. He's also good in these fast push of the outer turret situations. He does do very good turret damage, but he's actually going to focus more on selfish stats like picking up the Scuttle Crab, not rushing to get turret damage in. And we're returning to the standard lane swap that, again, not every series is like this, but when we do see it, it's been pretty straightforward, brute forcing of the outer turrets, mirrored on both sides of it.
Yeah, meanwhile, we actually see Rek'Sai here going for the gank in the mid lane. Fly has to flash, so Ambition decides, while we saw what happened in top, actually Score showing on that top side turret may have been a mistake because it actually initiated the gank in the mid lane. Once they knew that he was going to help that pressure, and he really didn't provide anything, but he was waiting for the Krugs to respawn, but in showing, he actually pretty much caused Fly to have to use his flash. Ambition got a ward in, and then made that decision afterwards. KT immediately transitioning to the Rift Herald.
Very, very early Rift Herald.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to give it a Score, though, from what we've seen on how KT likes to play.
Score doesn't die, actually. Very aggressive with the juggling, but yeah, another one of these teams that prioritize giving that buff to the jungler. One is Score, who's been mostly red hot in terms of form so far this season. I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, had an amazing week 1. His first week was pretty unbelievable in terms of his performance, particularly on that Kindred.
Let's know how well Peanut was playing, that he actually largely neutralized the effect of score in that best of 3. Yeah, again, we haven't seen him since then. Great first week. Not the strongest series against the Rocks Tigers, and now on the Graves, that definitely fits into the score wheelhouse. It's evolved from, you know, the likes of Sejuani, Rek'Sai, and Gragas last season to some more of these aggressive picks like Kindred and now Graves.
Yep, and we return to the lane swap here. Both top laners are zoned off the turret. Ambition starts to put wards in, takes the Grom. Meanwhile, we did see that Someday had to back way off the wave and try and take the Wolves. They do have information on the jungler though, and that went over to Someday in the end, so he did actually finish off the Wolf camp. Meanwhile, Score will take the Wolves.
Score is the highest level in the game, or joint highest level in the game. We noted that when Ambition was making his gameplay in mid that blew the flash of Fly, it was Score actually just taking the enemy Krugs, so been focusing on getting himself ahead. Just like Nidalee, Graves can really power farm himself to an early gold and level lead because he clears the jungle so sustained and so safely, so quickly, whereas you can see Ambition more priority on getting Cuvée some experience in the jungle follow.
Score here too, once again returning with that Herald buff. That actually does get a little bit more damage down onto the turret as a result, in addition to his auto attacks. So they're going to even up the speed of this trade.
It's one of the few champions we're putting it on that jungler in particular, a ranged AD champion with Herald. Just means you bring in the Herald, you bring in a minion wave, you get into melee range on the Graves, and those turrets die really fast.
Speaking of dying really fast, Someday takes a massive chunk. He's trying to get a pink ward into his top side, but still deep vision there from Ambition, who grabs the crab.
And Someday's going for the now popular boots only. Rush the Swifties, get away from ganks, be fast, be in position for those wall slams, but obviously trading not an option for this Poppy.
Prey Seeker trying to find Graves there, who had backed up all the way to the tier 2 just to make sure there wasn't going to be any shenanigans as Someday cleans up the wave. And Gnar all the way across the map now from where this wave is. Poppy going to get a little bit of a freeze right here. Ambition still trying to take away some of the enemy jungle.
I gotta say, if I'm gonna compare Gnar with no gold to Poppy with no gold, I think Poppy wins that race pretty handedly, unless you're the master of the Gnar bar when it comes to teleporting. So they really need to engineer a situation where Cuvée, their most reliable player this season, barring maybe Crown on Victor, Cuvé's shown more gears and in general has been very on form, but not been helped by his team in this lane swap. So Someday and Cuvée both playing with scraps in the early game.
Crown holding his own though. At least when it comes to dealing with his Zari, but we haven't really seen any ganks yet. Both players recently hit level 6 and Stitch. Okay, he is out of position. He's going to get the knockback right there. He's going to have to burn his flash for sure, and that's going to be a miss on the collateral damage. The Lantern is there, so he doesn't use his... Oh, he did use his flash in the end. Did have to burn it to get over to Wraith, but Wraith giving his AD carry a helping hand. Wraith was out warding at the time and does have to fall back, but uncharacteristic there. Score missing a couple of skill shots.
Didn't actually have enough damage to kill, even if they both hit, but obviously, as you mentioned, not something we expect from Score. It was so on point, those AD carries in particular. But the farm lead's there. He'll definitely outduel Ambition. I think for the majority of this game, it feels like if Graves is ahead in items, even if you build tank stats, you never can really eke ahead, because once you get more points into the quick draw, your effective tankiness over a long fight makes you susceptibly strong as kind of a mid-range to frontliner as this jungle Graves.
Indeed, and keep some eyes on how he builds most of these jungle Graves. The Warrior Enchant into the Yomus and then Sterix afterwards, getting a little bit of that extra tankiness so you can be that front line. And Fly is standing perfectly still as Ambition waltzes into the enemy jungle alone. Okay. Does he have the tunnel to get out of this? Yes, he does. Right back into the Dragon Pit, and with the pressure provided by Tristana, Ambition was safe.
Finally get the 2v2, but Stitch is obviously very, very overextended in bottom. That's why you see Ambition causing pressure in this bottom red side jungle. Poppy has to back, so we'll finally buy some effective stats, but lane is definitely overextended and need backup in both top and bot side of the jungle.
Score still just sneaking out with the Krugs. Ambition there for a little bit of pressure as Samsung really wants to push this out and absorb the freeze. Crown gets hit by a charm, but Fly not going to try an all-in right there. Has his blue buff up, but no help to attempt to take it right now. Poppy might be the help that Fly needs, or someday could simply wander off and clear some wards in the river. Has pushed his lane pretty far forward into the territory of Samsung, and so has a little bit of free time to start messing around with Samsung's vision game.
No big losers yet in these turret trades for now. Fairly even CS between lanes. I guess Arrow marginally ahead. Because of the lane assignments, you need Ambition to have pressure in the bot side jungle to be able to farm safely as Tristana. And I guess one of the awkward points is, of course, Tristana has the auto push in her E ability, so not able to deep freeze this wave, and pushing into the bottom lane when you don't have any turret to go back to is a risky proposition for Stitch. I guess we didn't even note it during the pregame, but Stitch back in after Core JJ was playing in that series against SK2.
Yeah, so I've been switching it up a little bit. Both of the AD carries for this team have actually been quite good, so.
Cuvée has the better, sorry, not Cuvée. Core JJ has the better stats, but
Stitch has the pentakill, Papa Smithy.
That's the crazy thing, is that Core JJ's stats make it look like he's been doing a lot of winning, but actually is, of course, had that 50% win rate after winning the first series and then losing 2-0. Back in mid lane is Ambition, but nothing onto Fire, whereas Stitch has the pentakill. The team has one more with him. Maybe that's an indication of communication. Maybe that's just the fact that he faced SKT, but as you mentioned, just as analysts watching the games, Stitch, Core JJ, both looking good.
Yeah, no real issue between them, and we've generally seen Stitch mostly on Callista so far, whereas Core JJ has preferred that Lucian.
Arrow himself, Lucian 5 games out of 6, I believe, so this is already something different from KT in the draft, as Chani obviously was not in range of that headbutt pulverize.
It was a zoning pull, Papa Smithy. It's in case the Rek'Sai flashed onto him right at that point in time.
The classic zoning pole headbutt pulverize.
No, just pulverize.
Well, he attempted headbutt, but was clearly not in range for it.
All right, Dragon coming through here. Crown zoned out. He's going to take a bit of damage. Fly trying to buy time right now, but they're going to engage. Arrow actually caught in the middle of all of that. They do get the Dragon, but at what cost? Crown actually gets destroyed by Score, who pops his ult from the Dragon pit. He then flashes out Stitch in the middle. And now Ambition gets knocked around by a Poppy ultimate. Score still pursuing, but everyone is so low on KT that they can't follow up any further. Still, a Dragon and 2 for none on a disjointed engage there from Samsung and Cuvée. And Cuvée not really in the right position with his Narbar to make that TP.
And Samsung got the Dragon, but crucially, Ambition had to be so overextended for that he couldn't group back and defend the carries. Both Crown and Stitch go down. Ambition got Graves low, but again, we're seeing the reality of Graves. He's not worried about having a tank in his face, so they take 2 kills and now the Dragon. So 2 kills and now the mid turret, so big win for KT.
And the Dragon. So yeah, 2 kills, Dragon, mid turret, all going in favor of KT off of that.
The Dragon
engage.
actually went to...
Oh, it got taken by Ambition,
Ambition.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
That's why he was out of position to kite back and tank.
Yep.
Tried to tank the Graves, but good luck with that. And yeah, the first Dragon is, as we mentioned, very important stats, but overall, definitely advantage KT.
Yeah, and wow, Bloodthirster first here. We didn't even take a look at that from Arrow.
We've seen a bit of this. There was actually one game while you were away where we saw Bloodthirster first. My treatise on it is that, of course, the original build, Sneaky was the one that piloted the Hurricane early, but it was Hurricane Bloodthirster because, of course, at least initially, there was no scaling in terms of critical strike that made sense for Callista. Now Hurricane does have crit strike scaling, but the big factor for Bloodthirster is the one item power spike is a lot weaker. When you have the Blade of the Ruin King, you have the active, you have some chase potential. Callista scales so well with attack speed in particular, whether it comes to lane control or team fights with the Rend, that usually you have to go Q max if you're going to go Bloodthirster. So in general, not really ready for team fights. Oh, it's Ambition. Caught out, but it's not Mad Life going for the hook for the play this time.
Nope, and here we go. Fly gonna ult in. Ambition caught out once again. And there's an Ambition moment.
Not even a Mad Life style Thresh throwing out the lantern was enough to save him that time.
Well, Hachani was right on top of that. Standing right there on top of that lantern to prevent the take. And there we go. It's another kill here. KT moves up to 3-0 and a 4K gold lead, very significant. And this is what you don't want to see with KT is someday starting to stack up those kills. He has gone Swifties into Iceborne. So this is probably the most carry-focused Poppy build we've seen. Usually you go Swifties with a tank item into Iceborne, not just straight move speed boots.
Look, it's not quite the
Iceborne.
someday carry build I hope for. Where's the Trinity Force, please? But you're right, it's the build that makes more sense. Your disruption is going to be insane. A lot of these Poppy players, Poppy, if you're against a majority physical lineup, and he is, of course, Corki, more than half of his damage is magic, but otherwise it's physical damage aplenty from Samsung. If you can stack armor, the one thing you'll notice is that actually the Iceborne Gauntlet armor scaling in terms of AoE comes through as a pretty big factor in terms of disruption, because I've seen Iceborne Gauntlet 400 armor Poppies in competitive play just run fights with massive slowing fields that of course scale with that armor.
Yeah, and it's another one of those aspects of Sunday's play against this poke composition. If he gets in the back line and gets an Iceborne proc off on one or two of the carries, there is no escape. I mean, that Ahri is going to come through, that Graves is going to come through your front line and just wreck the poke that you've got, whether it's going to be Crown or Stitch right here, who have to be outputting the damage. They're only a 2 damage to our composition.
Turn to the Rift Herald. It's not the 4-minute Rift Herald. It's left alone for a while.
Now KT has actually done better with this Rift Herald than we've seen most teams do. Even in that mid lane after the Dragon play right there, Score still had the Rift Herald, and it did really help put down the damage to take out the turret after they got the Dragon stolen away.
Look, jungle AD carries picking it up. That's the one class of jungler that makes sense to me. But that factor is Sunday's already on top of Cuvée.
Yeah, forces the flash, and here's Score. They've got the minion wave prepped up. They're just going to blow him up.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Taken out with that shotgun, and you know what? They've got a wave right here. They have the Rift Herald buff should they want to use it. Score decides there's more kills to be had.
And Score going for the carry build as well. So Someday and Score don't let us down. Ghostblade from the jungle. Someday going for, as you mentioned, the straight rush into Iceborne Gauntlet. Remember, Score picked up that kill. Didn't ult. He's level 11. 1,500 gold ahead of his opponent. And this is what Score does in solo queue. Now translating it to competitive play. His play on these dominant, fast farming junglers that can also duel is so impressive.
He's 2 levels up too, not to mention the gold lead that you noted, and that's a absolutely crazy advantage out of the jungle, especially since it's about 18 CS, but he's just been grouping around the minion waves with the rest of his team. 45 seconds now until Dragon, and goodbye Samsung wards here in the river.
To me, Graves is like a slightly better Nidalee, just because, of course, Nidalee has longer range poke, but the fact that Graves, once he gets 5 points into quick draw, can play in those close quarters, and his jungle clear, both their jungle clears are very, very quick. It feels like the Graves are just that much more valuable in the late game, and they're pretty similar in terms of skirmishing in the early to mid game.
Yeah, I actually don't think Nidalee is very good right now. I think it's definitely overpicked.
I mean, when Runeglaive was around, I agree. I feel like Runic Echo is actually very, very powerful on her. I think the champion is over-prioritized, but you saw what Peanut was able to do last week on that champion. I feel like it still has a place, but Graves, to me, outclasses her in a very similar way.
Yeah. I just feel that with Nidalee, there's always a better answer for a composition than having Nidalee, because she's a bit feast or famine. You have to get that Rod of Ages scaling up, and she's very volatile to play with in the late game because of her ability to get caught out and just instantly deleted from the team.
I think the Rod of Ages point is actually an interesting one I hadn't considered, just because you get that slight dip in your power spike 20 minutes in when you get your Rod of Ages, whereas Graves only gets stronger with that item, but can keep building long swords into things like the Serrated Dirk, into the cooldown reduction, building into Ghostblade or more Malmortius or into the Sterix Gauge. You're right, the itemization feels like it just keeps getting better for Graves.
It's clunky. The power curve is very clunky. And even though people will say, well, I would like Nidalee because I'm running a poke composition, I actually think that more peel is better for your poke comp. So if you have an opportunity to take like Elise or Rek'Sai with a 2-threat poke comp with like Varus and Corki, somebody's just gonna go in right now and knock up Wraith. Wraith is just destroyed by collateral damage. Ambition flashes over the wall, but he's got a dozen spears in him already, and now Arrow with the finisher on the red. Meanwhile, Fly found Crown on the flank and prevented him from really joining in that battle at all. Really smooth dive and very sudden from KT.
And we didn't even note this, but we have the two pseudo-mouth ults in Poppy and Alistair on the same team. Both of them can engage into that melee range knock-up from far away with both the heroic charge and the headbutt, and the result is the bouncy castle under that inner turret. People die to the burst damage. Really liking what KT's put together, and importantly, it's not about someday only. It's actually been Score that's been the big hero this game.
Yeah, 100% kill contribution. It's been his performance that has been putting it together for KT this season. You and I were talking about the Malphite ults that Poppy has with the 0 delay.
Seriously,
cast.
I was watching the NACS game earlier and I was trying to just work out, because I haven't looked at the numbers, how long that knock-up is. It looks like it's longer than Unstoppable Force. Maybe that's just because of the animation, but I'm like, this is a long knock-up. When Alistair's coming there as well, Cleanse isn't going to do you anything. The melee range use of that ult, but the fact that it's also got that other use depending on if you're sieging in a disengaged fashion. Poppy's got it all going on with that ultimate.
And the best part is that you can stun somebody with your E and then knock them up. So it's actually even better than a Malphite
Sure,
ultimate
when it's next to a wall, but in that scenario where we saw Someday, you flank, you get into range for the point-blank double cast of the ultimate with the heroic charge, so it's a lot like Headbutt in that scenario. And instant cast, instant knock-up, instant death for Samsung.
Iceboard too, you get an auto at the end of that with the slow field. I mean, I just think, I agree with you. I think Poppy's just ridiculous right now.
She is very, very powerful. It's good to see. And she was the adaptation. Remember, we saw no Poppy play in Korea week 1, and then suddenly the Poppy explosion. It's the fun thing about all these leagues being covered in English, or the fun thing that all these leagues are happening at the same time, is that the good strategies from other regions have come over to Korea, and now Poppy is a staple of early drafting in Korean League of Legends.
Top lane Poppy really mostly used over in the LPL, because in Europe week 1 it was a lot of support.
Still very strong there. We're yet to see it, but maybe when people come up with the strong lane matchups, we'll see it. Oh boy, here comes Ghostblade Score.
Yep, forces that flash instantly. Ambition takes the second part of that Graves queue.
Fly heading off Corki. Corki's really important to the wave clear, so occupying him in another lane is big for KT.
So threat from Achani, just making sure they know that the dive is a possibility. Kube in mini Gnar form right now, so Someday goes in, low mana, but still bullies them.
Whiffs his ult.
Yep, whiffs his ult, but it doesn't matter. It's just trying to push him off the tower right now.
Oh yes, another one of those zoning ultimates.
It was a zoning Poppy ult.
Gold leads.
I'm glad you understand, Bobby Smithy.
Zoning ults are a very powerful thing, as Graves has a lazy 2,800 gold lead over Ambition.
Uh-oh, there's the flash in, and Crown gets just nuked in that backside fly, gonna catch him and take the kill. Meanwhile, KT Someday now waltzing into the base, clearing out the minion wave. Easy inhibitor turret here at 21 minutes as KT has blanked Samsung when it comes to kills.
It's not a perfect game, but not much for Samsung to hold their heads on. KT from the jungle, just both in the pace of this game, Ambition, not got anything going whatsoever. Hard to find a positive out of the first 23 minutes for Samsung Galaxy.
It's been rough. They got a turret, or a couple turrets thanks to the lane swap, but they haven't been able to hold up against the strength here of Score's jungling and the fact that Arrow's been there with him the entire time.
He's just so far ahead of his opponent. I was worried when KT won that first team fight around Dragon with a bloodthirsty Kalista, despite the fact that she'd gone for that later power spike in the build. Now, the build looks just fine. Very, very safe. Now you can position very aggressively with the overshield and the high amount of lifesteal. And the game has been played around the mid lane, where Crown has done good wave clearing, has a lot of CS, but Fly just heading people off, just being a threat, trying to poke Crown on the outside of fights. And otherwise, it's basically been wave clear Ahri. We don't hear that very often, but certainly not been much play around the all-in combos from this Ahri.
Yeah, has the loot and Zeko to give a little bit of a boost there to the wave clear. They take away the blue buff now. But credit to Hachani too, who has been playing quite well around the backside of these turrets, and Hachani was always, as Alistair was always his best champion, so it's fun to see him on that pick once again. He really knows the limits very well.
Juve just turns back into mini now, so KT are really looking for any sort of pick.
Cross screen's claim slowing them up as they retreat all the way to their inhibitor. And there we go. And
Go
Johnny
time.
comes in once again, and there we see Fly following him right away. Someday going to pick up the first kill of this fight, and Wraith now has some trouble to deal with as a double kill for Someday as they just pile through that turret. We saw Kuve in the top side trying to deal with those super minions, and that's when KT put the pedal to the metal.
Sometimes we see 2 damage comps. There are 4 damage dealers, including this Poppy, coming through from KT. Everyone has burst, everyone has deletion damage. Arrow just skirts around the side looking for those Ren sets. KT have got it all going on.
Yes, they do. So another inhibitor now down, trying to finish out this game. They've got a lot of range damage. They have the Sheen from Poppy, so there's one inhibitor turret. This is going to be the end of the game here at 25 short minutes. KT, a dominant performance, lights out when it comes to kills in game number 1. They finish it 9-0.
And KT seem to have got that 8-day break exactly when they needed it. Have gone back, have obviously changed their style. No longer is it about purely outscale with Someday on the likes of Fiora in the top lane. They give Score something aggressive in the early game. The Graves we wanted to see certainly delivered in many different ways. And KT finally has shown a different gear after playing so much of this season in low gears. Slow, long, drawn-out games. We thought this was going to be a 45, 50-minute epic. Easily over in 25 minutes.
Yeah, definitely KT's most convincing game of the season.